All right, this is the gear. Spur gear is in fact the type of gear we're drawing tutorial. Tutorial 1 of modeling these gears, and you can see them on the screen there. And we have 2 of them, and they're attached to something that allows them to rotate. And by the way, of course, as you might expect, they do in fact rotate. So this is our goal. And once we finish drawing this, as it is a drafting course, you will of course draw a orthographic view drawing of this, which obviously you know is less scary than it looks. And also there's a gear drawn, the 32 tooth gear. Okay, so full disclosure, I didn't come up with this on my own. I surfed the internet and found a nice tutorial here by Product Designs Online, and just made a few modifications for our purposes, but this is where I'm pulling from. Feel free to visit. There's quite a bit of stuff here that's good. One of our future exercises will be to have you find something to draw that you want to draw and teach yourself. So think about that, or this location when I mention that. This tutorial's resource page is here, productdesign.com, page 1, I guess it is, P1, and that would take you to this place where he basically step-by-step walks through what he's doing in the video and adds a bit more information like gear terminology. So we're going to find out, we're going to talk about gears later, but there's all sorts of terminology here that comes into play that might be interesting. Gets into a bit of engineering. So without further ado, let's jump back into Fusion and begin. So where do we begin? Well, at the moment we are going to start a new design. And I'm going to first off save it somewhere. I'm saving it to drafting 10. I'm calling this the Spur Gear tutorial. You call yours what you want. Save. And let's begin drawing gears. Now, you might think that we would start by creating a sketch and then drawing a gear and maybe extruding it, which is totally possible. However, it involves understanding of how gears are made and some math and all that sort of stuff. So it's easier than that. Something that we haven't covered yet in Fusion is the idea that there are add-ins. Hit your S key, bring up the shortcut toolbox, and type in scripts, and you will get scripts and add-ins. Click on that. And when you do, there's a whole bunch of add-ins that actually came when you loaded Fusion. There are more add-ins that you can add as well. Maybe we'll cover those later, but at the moment we're looking for the one that is Spur Gear. So Spur Gear here, and the one we want is, well, go to add-ins here, not scripts, go to add-ins, and we'll go find Spur Gear. And there's 2 kinds here. One is C++ based language, one is Python based language. We're going to go with the Python one here and stick with this one, so you stick with me. So Spur Gear, and then when you do that, you're going to hit run. Okay, now notice what it says here. The Spur Gear command has been added to the Create panel of the model workspace, and that's that up here. So we'll push OK. So if I go up to Create, you'll see that I can now make Spur Gears. I have loaded a little mini program that someone wrote, and this program is specifically to help us draw a Spur Gear. So another place to find it now would be in your shortcuts, and if you type, well, actually I added it to my shortcuts, but if I type Spur, you'll see it'll come up down here as Spur Gear. By the way, if you ever want to add something that you're using quite often to the shortcuts toolbar, you can click on the end of it here and it would add it to the shortcuts of your shortcuts toolbar. Okay, so I'm going to go create a Spur Gear, and a menu comes up, and this is the all-important menu. It's just asking us a series of questions about the gear we'd like to create. So we're going to create an English standard gear. Some of the details of a gear are shown up here will help us. The pressure angle is a technical term. I think I had it here, pressure angle in Wikipedia, and if you want to go into the details, it's basically a very specific way of describing the angle at which the pressure is going to be applied to the tooth. So if I go back, all you need to know is there's some common angles. 20 degrees is the most common, and we're going to stick with that. And so the next one is I've got the numbers in already. Yours might, like, what it's done is it's remembered the last thing I drew. So you might have something totally different. You might have 64 teeth. You might have, let's go there. Let's go up here and make this, I don't know, 12. And let's go down here. And I'm just messing it up so you can see. Okay, so what we've got going here, oh, I just noticed everything's in inches. We're going to work in millimeters, so jump out of this for a second, cancel, go up here to documents and change your units to millimeters. And there we go, we're in millimeters. Push OK, and you're probably thankful we're working in millimeters. Head back to making a spur gear, head back into this. So what we're looking for is a spur gear that's 32 teeth. And then we would like it to be a certain diameter. And right now it's like 400 millimeters, and that's 40 centimeters, which is over a foot, and that's too big. So what we want to do is change a few things here. So module is important. Module is basically taking something called pitch diameter and dividing it by the number of teeth, or the number of teeth divided by the pitch diameter. I can't remember, I'll show you in a second. So pitch diameter is this circle here on the outside that basically helps us with intersecting the second gear that would come in, and it's the line on which they would intersect essentially. So we would like that to be 64. So that makes this module thing 2. Now, module is pitch diameter divided by number of teeth. That's what it is. So if I have a pitch desired, which is in this case 64 millimeters, and I divide by the number of teeth desired, I will arrive at the number I need to put in something called module. So it's 2 for the module, 32 for the teeth. Backlash. Now backlash is basically 2 gears come together. They don't necessarily, well, you don't usually want them to fit perfectly. You need a little space between them, which allows one gear to move back and forth against the other on the teeth. So that's called backlash. Normally backlash is in there not just to make sure they don't wedge together, but also enough backlash is in there to allow for some lubricant to live in there, because lubricant has a thickness depending on its viscosity, which is its resistance to flow. So thicker lubricants would require a bigger gap between the teeth, and thinner lubricants a thinner gap. So in this case, we're going to make this backlash 0.15 millimeters, 0.15. And because it's applied to both gears, that gap will end up being 0.3 millimeters in the end. And we'll see how that works out. Basically, we're making these gears to be 3D printed, and if our 3D printer is calibrated in, or different 3D printers can be calibrated differently, can result in some outcomes that may be too tight, maybe too loose, but we're going to try this to begin with. We'll leave the root fillet radius here. So they're talking about this little radius down in the bottom, and it says here currently it's too large. It must be less than 1.1. So we're going to make it smaller. If you make it too large, you get something called undercutting of the tooth. It goes kind of around and back in and out. So we don't want that. So we're going to make this root fillet radius 0.9 millimeters. The gear thickness, this is actually the extrusion height or the width of the gear. So we're going to make this 5. And the hole diameter in the middle, I believe we're going to make that, I'll have to check, but I think it's 10. I'll update you on the next video if I want to change it, and I'll show you how easy it is to change it, but I think we're going with 10 right now. Okay, so we'll hit OK. And look what happens. A little bit of thinking, and voila, our first gear. And it's pretty easy to draw it that way as long as you know a couple things about the questions being asked in the menu. Now, notice what went in down here in our history. The first gear came in as a component. It's called Spur Gear 32 teeth. There it is. And you can activate the component if you want, and that allows you to draw on that component, just like we know, right? There's bodies and sketches. So if I expand this, what's called a group down here, you can see all of the steps needed to make the spur gear. And this is what the little add-in did for us. Based on the questions that we answered in the dialog box, it went ahead, it drew a sketch. Now let's back this up and have a look at it. Let's draw this all the way back to here. The first thing it did was a sketch. Now you can't see it because I have to turn the sketch on, but it did that. And the second thing it did was it extruded the sketch to 5 millimeters. The third thing it did, it drew another sketch. So I'll turn that one on. And what's that a sketch of? Well, looks like the first tooth that it wanted to make and the profile of that tooth based on what it, the add-in knows about how to make gear teeth that we don't. Then we go to the next step and you can see it extruded that to 5 millimeters. And I'm going to click ahead to the next step, and it obviously put a radius in down here, which is based on our, well, we put in a radius of 0.15, so that's in there. And now we're going to go ahead, and it did a circular pattern, because we know up under here you can create patterns, and one of them is circular, so that is right down here. You see it says C pattern. That's what it did, and it made a circular pattern all the way around. And then the last step was one last sketch. Now let's have a look at this last sketch. Well, we can see it, it's on. So it's drawn, I'll hit top so I'm looking down directly at this. It's drawn in the last sketch this line, and this is that pitch diameter that is going to help us with placing the intersecting gear. So that's what it did. And it put it in a group, which is nice and tidy. I can hit the minus sign and the group will be collapsed. I can hit right click. I can rename my group and call it Spur Gear 32 Tooth. And hit enter. And now if I were to hover over the group, it tells me at the bottom, it shows me all of the steps in the little window there, but also at the bottom it says that's the Spur Gear 32 Tooth. Cool, right? Basically, that's how easy it is to draw a spur gear. Now in the next video, we are going to talk about bringing in or creating a second gear and how to mesh it with this one. So that's it for this video.